Welcome to the Holy Post. The memorial service for Charlie Kirk revealed a deep contradiction within the MAGA movement. Kirk's widow was cheered when she forgave his assassin and modeled Jesus' command to love our enemies. But the crowd also cheered when Stephen Miller and Donald Trump dehumanized their opponents and expressed hatred for their enemies. Esau McCaulley joins me and Phil this week to discuss the tension between Christian love and pagan power. Also this week, Dr. Terence Lester tells his inspiring story in his new book, From Dropout to Doctorate, and how he's working both spiritually and systemically to reform education. Hey, if you're still looking for a good reason to become a HOLYPOST Plus member, well, I've got one for you. Terence Lester's new book, From Dropout to Doctorate, Breaking the Chains of Educational Injustice, is our pick for the HOLYPOST Book Club this quarter. That means subscribers to HOLYPOST Plus at the $10 or higher level will get a free copy of his book. And when you hear the interview today, you're really going to want one. Of course, HOLYPOST Plus subscribers also get hours of additional content every week, including ad-free episodes of The Holy Post, full episodes of The Skye Pod, Getting Schooled by Caitlin Chess, My Hill to Die On, and you can also get both written and audio versions of the book I'm currently releasing one chapter every month, The World Born in You, plus a whole lot more. That's why we call it HOLYPOST Plus. Go to holypost.com to sign up today. Here is episode 688.
Hey there, welcome back to the show. This is Holy Post Podcast. I'm Phil Vischer. I'm here with Skye Jitani. Hi, Skye.
Hi, Phil.
And I'm also here with, it's not Caitlin. It is not, who else is it not? It's not Mike Strelo. It's not...
Mike Erie.
It is Esau McCaulley.
I'm glad that I was your first choice.
It was Esau McCaulley.
How far into the... I'm sorry.
Down the list?
Yeah. I was going to say Rolodex, but maybe that's of a certain age group. How far did you scroll through your accounts before you texted me to come?
Well, technically, you do work here.
I do work
here.
Well, thank you guys for having me on the podcast.
For heaven's sake, Skye, where did you just fly in from?
I was in Los Angeles.
Oh, speaking?
I spoke at New Song yesterday.
How'd it go?
Well.
Did you say anything offensive?
To someone, I'm sure.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah.
I just flew in from New York City.
What were you doing there?
Wild. We came from opposite ends.
And met in the middle.
On the third coast. I was attending my niece's wedding.
Oh, that's right.
Anna.
Yeah. How was it?
Anna got married. It was good.
Yeah.
It was just a whole different world of a wedding on Roosevelt Island.
Oh.
In, just off Manhattan with mostly New Yorkers there. They're all their friends.
That makes sense.
Yeah, it's very interesting. It's just different. I'm a Midwest boy. I'm an Iowa boy.
You don't spend much time in New York, do you?
I do not.
Yeah.
No,
Excuse me.
I do not. You okay? Isa?
Yeah, I just coughed a little
Where'd
bit.
you just fly in from?
I walked here.
Oh, that's good. Okay, and now it's time for the theme song.
What's the news that you like the most? Who's your favorite podcast host? If it's breakfast, get your toast. It's Skye, Phil, Caitlin, and the Holy Post. Skye, Phil, Caitlin, and the Holy Post.
And sometimes other people.
This episode of The Holy Post is sponsored by Rocket Money. I used to use an online money tracking service that I loved. It was simple, easy to use, and did exactly what I needed to help me keep on top of our spending. But then a bigger company bought it, apparently decided it was too simple and easy, and shut it down. And for a few years, I wasn't tracking our money at all, which is not a great idea. And then I saw an ad for Rocket Money. It was like the old service I loved, but even better. So for the last few years, I've used Rocket Money to track our spending, create budgets, and even identify and cancel old subscriptions I was sending money to each month without knowing. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. Rocket Money's 5 million members have saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions, with members saving up to $740 a year when they use all of the app's premium features. It's simple, it's easy, and it just works. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/holypost today. That's rocketmoney.com/holypost. rocketmoney.com/holypost. Today's episode is sponsored by Sunday's Food for Dogs. We love our dog. Her name is Keena. We love to give her belly rubs, and she loves to patrol our backyard to make sure no squirrels break into our house to steal our valuables. We also love to give her Sunday's Food for Dogs. It's fresh, healthy dog food that's easy to store and serve. Most dog food is one or the other, either fresh and healthy, or easy to store and serve. Because Sundays is air-dried, it doesn't require refrigeration or prep. It comes right to our door so we never run out, and it's healthy food. Human-grade ingredients, 90% meat, 10% superfoods, 0% anything else. Folks who've switched their dogs to Sundays notice health improvements like softer fur, fresher breath, and more energy. Keena loves Sundays food for dogs, and we love that it keeps her healthy and strong so she can keep the squirrels from taking our stuff. Give it a try. Right now you can get 40% off your first order of Sundays. Go to sundaysfordogs.com/holypost or use code HOLYPOST at checkout for 40% off your first order. Okay, so I was away for the weekend. I was mostly focusing on other things, but I was also keeping an eye on the news and a little bit on Twitter, partly because after last week's episode, I went a little bit, I got picked up. I got clipped.
Oh.
I got tweeted. People went through last week's show to find the single most potentially inflammatory thing that was said and clipped it and shared it.
What is the level below viral?
Like,
You didn't go viral.
Head cold.
I didn't go viral. I went bacterial.
Okay.
No,
I would say head cold.
It did.
It's not like a full-on virus where you're like out for a couple of days.
Okay.
But like the sniffles. You had the sniffles on social media.
Isn't there still usually a virus involved in those?
My wife's a doctor. She's probably shaking her head.
Yeah, like, what are you...
like, what is my husband talking about?
Didn't I raise you better than this? Esau McCaulley. No, but it got picked up by Breitbart News, which then tweeted it to their 2.6 million followers. And so then I was like, oh, this could get ugly. And it didn't that much. It actually, so either people didn't care or the tweet didn't fit the algorithm and didn't get carried.
There's a lot happening in the world, Phil. I'm sorry, but you're not going to be on
maybe
top
we
of
have
the
other stuff to do
headlines.
than be mad at you.
Maybe, VeggieTales guy says something that we on the right don't like is no longer news.
Right. It's sort of dog bites man.
Just doesn't,
Isn't that good news, though?
Which one am I, the dog or the man?
I'm saying the story is just normal, so it doesn't get as much.
Maybe it's good news. You can just go back to living your normal life.
I can just go back to living my normal life.
Going to weddings and enjoying time on the East Coast.
Tremendous amount of social media activity over the weekend about the memorial service held in Arizona when the stadium, the State Farm Stadium. Yeah,
I have no idea.
Yeah.
You have no idea where it was held?
I don't. I didn't watch it. I didn't see it.
Yeah, I know. Did you watch any of it?
Is that where the Cardinals play?
Yes.
I've been there.
It's where the Cardinals really?
I've watched a Cardinals game in that stadium.
Well, that's where it was.
Okay.
And it was
Now I know.
packed. So like
It's a very nice stadium.
65,000 people
But
came.
they said 90,000 because there are people who are on the outside.
They had overflow. 200,000 people asked for tickets for the Charlie Kirk memorial service. It was 5 hours long. It had a mix. It was an interesting mix. I didn't watch it, but I kind of followed some people that were live covering it, and then read a lot. It was an interesting mix of fairly celebratory evangelical memorial service that you might see in a mega church for a very popular person or an important faith leader, crossed with a MAGA rally.
But that's kind of what Charlie Kirk was, though, is a Christian voice and a
mean,
MAGA voice.
One of the first people that spoke described him as the ultimate MAGA warrior. And generally, people have been trying to describe him over the last week as a Christian evangelist, a Christian martyr, a Christian saint, the 13th apostle. So very, very spiritual language. But it was almost, because I've always thought of him primarily as a political activist.
Well, his organization is a political mobilization organization to get young people recruited into
so this change in the narrative from, no, he's not a political activist, he's an evangelist. Yeah. Like, oh, well, that's new. I wasn't aware of that. So there was a fair amount of what you would expect, like if a Billy Graham memorial service, of a lot of people coming up and saying what a wonderful man he was, and then a worship like Chris Tomlin played, so very popular worship acts played. But then you had this, and in that regard, his pastor gave a clear presentation of the gospel and actually gave an altar call, asked people to raise their hand if they'd, so which, some people said, well, that's just completely inappropriate. I'm like, no, have you never been to an evangelical funeral? That sort of thing happens.
I remember there's this time, like, I wouldn't say that every funeral has an altar call.
Oh, I would not say that
But some
either.
of them. But I was actually thinking of, on a totally different scenario, there was a time where someone had gotten shot in my neighborhood. It was a young kid. He was a teenager. And I don't think the kid was into too much bad stuff, but he was in a rough part of the neighborhood. And so he had a lot of people who were like, everybody from the community came, both kind of the upstanding kids and the kind of out in the street kids. And it was in that context where the pastor goes, normally I don't do this, but this is the only time I get some of you all here.
Yeah.
And he gave a gospel presentation there. And I remember seeing some of the people who were crying. They was young 16, 17-year-olds who didn't move. Like they were like, I remember seeing the like spiritual turmoil. And like, I also remember, I didn't keep a list, but like what happened in the long-term spiritual implications of all that. And some of those people who kind of rejected that altar call ended up finding themselves in kind of difficult places. So I have been to a funeral where it's like, death is real. This is an opportunity for you to kind of...
I mean, I think it's often very appropriate. Especially the death of a believer, to talk about ultimate hope and...
Now, there were some odd things, like when the grieving widow came out to talk, there were pyrotechnics to introduce her.
That's more MAGA rally than, than funeral.
Like rock band level sparks shooting out of the platform in all directions. Did
they do that with anyone else?
No, I don't think so.
Not even the president?
I didn't.
He didn't watch all 5 hours.
Watch all 5 hours. I don't know, but it was just
fireworks at a funeral is a little weird.
That's unusual. Yeah. But then she gave a pretty amazing talk where she forgave the assassin.
That's the headline I've been seeing today.
Yeah,
the one thing I've encountered, and I haven't watched it, but that act on her part, obviously very Jesus-like. I hope that actually calms things down, right? That if there are any people, we've talked about this previous weeks, any people who were really activated by this assassination and seeking vengeance and retribution and wanting to take it out on who, I hope they heard her words and realize.
You didn't see it.
See what?
Her.
No, I read it. I saw.
Oh
I
no,
read her
I saw.
comments.
I saw. That was the clip that I saw. I'm going to be honest. I did not watch the rally. Yeah. Sorry, I'm not trying to be flippant. I didn't watch the memorial service. I was not trying to call it a rally. Yeah. I did not watch the memorial service. But I saw that clip, and if you watch it, you can see her, like gather up the emotional wherewithal to say, "I forgive him."
Yeah.
And to me, that was moving. Anyone who can stand up in front of the world and say, someone who I deeply cared about was murdered and I forgive them, that to me was profound. And it reminded me of this has happened a bunch of times. Yeah. But it reminded me of the shooting of Mother Emanuel.
Mm-hmm.
Where they not only said, like, I forgive you, in a similar way, rooted directly in like their Christian faith. And there were some people, if I remember this correctly, they also advocated against his death penalty.
Right.
And so to me, in so much in that place, I think that her name's Erica, right? Erica. Yeah. Erica Kirk and the people at Mother Emanuel, the survivors of the families of the survivors of Mother Emanuel, represented Christianity well there. Yeah. They said that Jesus has forgiven me, I forgive, and I wish we could just say, that was great, and end the conversation. But I feel like there's another part that's about to drop.
Okay, one of the things, she came out 2 days after he was killed and was standing next to his podcast desk, and she gave a lengthy statement, and that one, I mean, goodness, she was 48 hours a widow, grieving a most horrific thing imaginable. And that I recall being much more vitriolic and much more vengeful and angry, understandably.
I just for me, if someone who you love gets shot, I don't know what the time frame is before I expect coherence, but it's definitely not.
I agree. But I would think anybody in that horrible situation, like, don't put a camera on them. Let them go through that roller coaster.
One of the things, and this is not to to deflect. But one of the things that I've often seen interesting in these kinds of things, because a lot of times these things happen in the context of grieving parents around like racially charged shootings. And a lot of times you see these parents come in and say, let us like kind of choose nonviolence. You see a lot of the times people say, hey, let's let the court system play this out. Let's not destroy our communities. And those are important messages. But I've always thought it's really interesting that you almost require people in the moment to have a kind of emotional and spiritual sophistication to be able to articulate those things. So I didn't even listen to her first statement on that podcast. I didn't even hear it. But I did think that what she did, I didn't even hear the rest of that. I didn't hear the rest of her talk from the memorial, but I thought that part that she did there was worthy of commendation.
I just hope America listens to her. Because I think, to your point, she did represent the faith well.
Right.
Yeah.
But this is where it gets a little conflicted, because she spoke later. Earlier, Stephen Miller spoke, probably the most powerful man in America after Donald Trump. And she forgave Kirk's killer. Stephen Miller, in essence, damned all of Kirk's enemies to hell. Here's some quotes from Stephen Miller's talk. Our enemies cannot comprehend our strength, except when he speaks, he yells. He yells. So I'll picture all of this.
Yeah, please don't yell.
Yeah, I'm not yelling. Picture all of this being yelled. Our enemies cannot comprehend our strength, our determination, our resolve, our passion, our lineage, and our legacy hails back to Athens, to Rome, to Philadelphia, to Monticello. Our ancestors built the cities. They produced the art and architecture. They built the industry.
I think there were a lot of enslaved people who built those things.
Literally started.
Literally, yes.
Literally, the slaves built Monticello.
Right.
Literally, he didn't build it.
It's interesting to make the leap from Charlie Kirk was assassinated to our ancestors are the ones that built everything valuable.
Yeah.
Okay, 50% of this country votes Democrat. Roughly 50% votes Republican.
Yeah.
The half that votes Democrat also, their ancestors also built this country.
Did they, though?
No. So
Okay, hey, I'm not done yet.
Sorry, go ahead.
Hold that thought. We stand for what is good, what is virtuous, what is noble, and for those trying to incite violence against us, those trying to foment hatred against us, what do you have? You have nothing. You are nothing. You are wickedness, you are jealousy, you are envy, you are hatred. You are nothing. You can build nothing. You can produce nothing. You can create nothing. We are the ones who build. We are the ones who create. We are the ones who lift up humanity. You have no idea the dragon you have awakened. You have no idea how determined we will be to save this civilization, to save the West, to save this republic. To our enemies, you have nothing to give. You have nothing to offer. You have nothing to share but bitterness. We built the world that we inhabit now. This was to commemorate the death of Charlie Kirk.
Yeah.
So this is the thing that I've been asking a lot, because on one level, this particular narrative isn't new. The idea that everything that was of value has been produced by the West because of the virtues and the creativity that just happens to reside in Western Europe and North America in a way that ignores the massive slave culture in both Rome and the United States. And sometimes it's an old story. It's like the great myth of downplaying. It's interesting that you put that narrative that he put forward alongside what has been a consistent theme in this same kind of political world that we talk too much about slavery. Right. And so you say less about slavery, you say less about injustice, so that then you can present this narrative. And so for me, that I found on some sense old, but also like deeply troubling. The fact that one of the problems with talking about all of this stuff is that it's all mixed together. And by that I mean, on one moment you have a grieving woman forgiving the murder of her husband. And then you have, hey, we built everything, and let's not talk about the slave labor that made the economy go. And if I say, hey, maybe this account of the development of American history is wrong, then I am accused of not caring about the murder of someone who is innocent. And I could actually say these two things are true at the same time. What Erica Kirk did was commendable. Mm-hmm. What happened to Charlie was a tragedy because it's the murder of an innocent person. But those two things do not give you permission to lie about all of the things that he lied about. And I know this is the last part, the dehumanization of our enemies is particularly dangerous. When you say that you are nothing, you have nothing, you are nothing. The whole point of Christianity is that even our enemies remain persons made in the image of God. And so that language of you're nothing to me sounded chilling in a way that I don't see how. I remember, and maybe you can cut this out. I remember being a pastor. I am a pastor. And sometimes when you invite a speaker, they say things that are so far beyond the pale. It is your job in the middle of the service to go, you know what? That was too far. Mm-hmm. As a moment,
can you give us some examples of that happening? Because
if someone stood up and said those things at a memorial service, as the pastor of the church, I would stand up and go.
Right. Even if you're inviting people to just come up and give a few thoughts.
Actually,
about
I would.
The person.
In that kind of
open mic,
you kind of
risky.
You bet it. You bet it. And so I'm not. So I do think there's a more responsibility when something like that happens to clarify that part was not of Jesus.
Okay, can I back up to your reading of Miller's comments, Phil? Because there's a contradiction in there that I don't know how to reconcile. Because on the one hand, he's of course saying that those on the left have built nothing, they've created nothing, they're not responsible for anything.
It isn't entirely sure who the they is
I'm assuming
nothing,
it's his,
or who the we is that have done everything.
Well, it's the political enemies of Donald Trump or the people opposed to MAGA, I assume. But on the flip side, one of the narratives you constantly hear from the political right and from MAGA folks is that liberals control and built Hollywood. Liberals controlled and built the academy. Liberals control and built
took over.
The media.
They took over.
Fine, they took them over, but they've expanded. I mean, the media, all these things, and that the right needs to take them back. And it's like, well, if they don't have anything and they don't build anything and they're not doing anything, then why are they so threatening to you?
Because they take over things like things that take over things that are evil.
So, I mean, on
like
the one
viruses.
hand, you want to create this big bad monster of the left that's controlling everything, that's dominating everything, that's destroying everything. And on the other side, you want to say they're weak and useless and pathetic. And it's like, you can't have it both ways.
Bill Kristol, writing for The Bulwark, said this. He said, I have thought and thought, but I cannot reconcile how these two messages, Kirk's and Miller's, Erica Kirk's and Stephen Miller's, appeared on the same stage yesterday. They are not just in tension, they are diametrically opposed. One is rooted in a commitment to recognize even one's worst enemies as human beings with inherent value. The other is built on a fundamental belief that those enemies shouldn't be seen as human at all. You are nothing. You are nothing. You are nothing. And that I see that some people on the right have already come out to condemn Erica's forgiveness.
Really?
Yeah, saying one person said, a commentator on social media said, this is the empathy that's killing the West.
Yeah, the empathy of Jesus.
But this is okay. Here's my point. What was kind of nonsensical about the content of the entire presentation yesterday is at the heart of MAGA.
Right.
It's this desire to be perceived as Christian and entirely genuinely for a huge percentage, of Trump voters. I'm a Christian, mixed with the desire to hate. I hate what's happening. I hate those people over there. I hate those people over here. How do we hold these things in tension? We just kind of ignore the tension.
It's paganism. It's this pagan desire for power and strength and domination while appearing Christian. And that's the contradiction. And one side or the other is going to win this thing. And I mean, right now it feels like the pagan side in MAGA is winning, even though the rhetoric is Christian, but they can't coexist.
Which is also interesting because the head of the FBI said about Charlie Kirk,
See you in Valhalla.
you'll be welcomed into Valhalla.
Which is paganism, the pagan heaven, basically.
The Norse.
And yet MAGA wants this Christian veneer, this appearance of Christ and Christianity and the virtues of the scriptures. And you can't have those things coexisting.
Yeah, so this is the conflict within the greater MAGA movement. We love Jesus and you are nothing. We are passionate for the Church of Christ. No, wait, we meant for Western civilization. It's an internally inconsistent movement. Just the number of right-wingers who are now criticizing a grieving widow for forgiving her husband's assassin, for taking the Christian position on forgiveness instead of the far-right position on we've got to kill our enemies. We've got to drive these people out of the public square.
So which of these messages is going to win the day?
Which way? There's the old meme, which way, oh Western man, which comes from a white nationalist publication about 50 years ago, but pops up a lot. And it's like, which way, MAGA man? Is it Christianity or is it paganism?
This is why I said I hope America listens to Erica Kirk.
And for so many, the answer is, how about a little of both? I just want
It's conditional. It's, in certain settings.
Yeah, I've already seen justifications for Miller's talk. It's like, well, he represented the state, and so the state needs to be defeating evil. Erica represented personal, allegiance to Jesus, so they're completely consistent together.
This is exactly what my sermon was about yesterday.
Oh, tell us more.
Oh, we'll post it later online, but it's it's about the simplicity of Christian love, or the unity of Christian love, that it applies. We can't just make it conditional to our circumstances.
I think that there is one of the things that Christians struggle with, all of us, is to take the cross seriously. And that may seem to be like excessively theological, but I think that when we get into a conversation like this, it's always important to kind of raise the theological bar. And yes, I've said this 1,000 times, the cross is an atonement for sins that brings about, helps us be reconciled to God. But it is also a critique of like how the state does stuff. And the state kills its enemies. And so the idea that rather than the all-powerful God who chooses instead of destroying his enemy, to embrace vulnerability and love as a means of transformation is something that nobody wants to hear because it's very inconvenient and it's very inefficient. Like loving your enemies is super inefficient and it doesn't always work because sometimes the enemies that you love kill you.
It doesn't get us what we want.
And so what I'm saying to you though, and maybe this is the part that at least makes me slightly uncomfortable with this, is to say, like MAGA, there's a portion of MAGA that isn't super interested in loving your enemies. That's true. But I would say it's also, and this is not both sidesism, it's just being comprehensive in their rebellion. How about that? That it is true that also the definition of love that sometimes operates on the left is like an undiscerning affirmation of whatever you feel is important to you. And so the idea that God would love you into becoming a different person is challenging to one side, right? That God will love you in the transformation, that there is a God who kind of gives you an identity as a gift from him. And there's a God who says to the people in power, you can't smash your enemies. There's a place where if we had a comprehensive gathering around the cross, everybody will find themselves humbled. And then it's easy in the context of whatever was happening. I want to call it a memorial service. In the context of the memorial service, it's easy to say, okay, here's Erica Kirk. Here's Stephen Miller. Here's the people who lifted up Erica as being virtuous. Here are the Christians who are the people who thought this is untethered empathy. But what do we do after we said those things? What we do after we said those things is, for me, after I have done what rallies my base, call MAGA bad, how do I then say, well, how does this thing like
just
land
for the
me?
record, I did not call MAGA bad. I called it internally inconsistent.
Oh no, I wasn't criticizing you.
Okay.
I wasn't criticizing. Why would I criticize you?
That's other people's jobs.
It's for the internet.
We've outsourced that one.
We've outsourced that one.
No, but to your point though, Esau, I wouldn't just say there's a portion of MAGA that doesn't want to love their enemies. There's a portion of me that doesn't want to love my enemy.
People
right?
think this has been easy for me. You know how much I've wanted to like cook over the last week or two, but I've tried to like find something redemptive in all of this, which has been digging hard.
In a weird way, that rally isn't just
It's a memorial service.
Sorry, you're correct. I apologize.
I know, so we're trying not to be flippant.
That memorial service isn't just a glimpse into the internal contradiction of MAGA. It's a glimpse into the internal contradiction of every human being.
Yeah.
We have these things in us. And the question is, which voice will we listen to and follow?
And like, and the reason, and I don't, like these things happened. There was tariff talk about like, you know, like during the, do you hear about that during the service? Yes.
No.
So during the, when the president got up to speak, he talked about how the only people, I think this is true, if not, you can edit it out, but the only people who oppose tariffs are the people who hate America. So he had a moment where in the midst
just
of his
full-on political rally.
So there's parts of it where it was, this is an occasion where everybody's gathered and everybody's paying attention. So I'm going to get across my political thing. And so, yes, there was a memorial service happening, but there was effectively interspersed into that a rally. So it's kind of hard. I don't want to be flippant to call it a rally, but when you have someone who's not talking about the person at all, and you're using that as an opportunity to talk about what you're interested in, it's hard for me to kind of not be disappointed in that at points.
Yeah, and in the midst of that, after Erica Kirk forgives her enemy, the President of the United States gets up and makes a joke that he does not love his opponents and he does not wish them well. He wishes them harm. And Erica can try to convince him otherwise, but probably not. It's like, wow, have you ever heard the President of the United States get up in a memorial service and say he wishes his opponents harm? That's where we are. That's remarkable. Okay, Washington Post. Black Christians confront Charlie Kirk's religious legacy. Hours after Charlie Kirk was killed in Utah, Pastor Jamal Bryant condemned the shooting of the right-wing activist on social media, but in the days that followed, he grew unnerved by conservatives and white Christians praising Kirk while ignoring some of his most controversial rhetoric, particularly on issues of race. Many conservative Christians, particularly white evangelicals across the country, have lionized Kirk. Some equated his killing to the murder of civil rights leader Martin Luther King. Kirk's death and the embrace of his legacy by some conservative Christians is forcing some black Christians like Bryant to reconcile Kirk's insulting comments about people of color, which many considered racist, with values of tolerance and empathy that are fundamental to their faith. Then they asked a guy named Esau McCaulley what he thought about all this.
Oh, they did.
And he said he's trying to strike a delicate balance when addressing Kirk's death before the multiracial congregation at the church where he's founding pastor. The activist's words were likely to have been hurtful to many members, McCaulley said, but his death robbed Kirk of a chance to grow in his understanding that empathy is a Christian superpower. McCaulley said, we should get this guy on. He sounds smart.
Yeah,
I believe that no matter who you are, what you've done, you have the potential to grow and change to be better. And for that reason, anyone's death is a tragedy. It's sad if someone dies in the middle of their story, and we never get to see how the rest of it changes because you never know what God can do in someone's life.
Yes.
I think there was even some evidence in the last couple months that Charlie Kirk was changing some of his...
He was talking more about his faith and less about his politics, and making statements that that faith is ultimately the thing that will lead to change, not just political activism. So he was changing.
He was only 31 years old.
I know.
I mean, there was a hope. There should have been a much longer story, like you said.
So is there anything that you said that you wished the Washington Post had run with?
Yeah, what I was trying to say in that piece is that every death is. What do I want to say? Anything? They did a pretty good job. I think in my congregation, I wasn't trying to strike a delicate balance. Like to me, you're not balancing agendas. You're telling the truth.
Yeah.
But you're trying to tell the truth with charity. And so for me, it was like being honest about the things that were hurtful to people, and then being also honest about the fact that his death is a tragedy. And so I think that the balance is some people only want to hear one side of that truth. Yeah. And saying both of those truths are 10 toes down, it's not always easy to do as a Christian leader. But my opinion, I've said this 1,000 times to anyone who will listen, if you know the truth and you refuse to tell it because of the implications of telling that truth, then you're no longer the pastor. You're just an opinion poller. You're just kind of reading the winds and you're kind of going this way or the other. And so
You can do that with AI.
And so I tried to do that. But one of the things that I would say is, when I talked about his death, I was talking about it in the context of any death. You can have someone who had lived a difficult life. Let's say someone who, when someone gets shot like by the police or something, what they often do is they do an assessment of this person's life. And they go, look, he or she had these amount of crimes, they've done all these things. Therefore, we know what that person is going to be for the rest of their lives.
Right.
Therefore, whatever happened with this police officer wasn't a tragedy. It was just, it's what he deserved. And I kind of go, no, you never know what this person's story is going to be. Because I know tons of people who said, I used to be one way, including myself, and then God changed me.
Yeah.
And so I can never look at the current data of anybody's life and say, I know what is going to happen.
Which
People
is
surprise us.
Also another good argument against the death penalty.
Yes, I mean, I'm anti-death penalty. There we go. And so when I see Charlie Kirk's life, I can say, I do not know what the next 30 to 40 years of his life would have been. And therefore, his death is a tragedy. His death is a tragedy, full stop. But the fact that he died in the middle of his story is tragedy. And so for me, the most complicated people are the ones, it sounds weird, who I grieve the most. Because if it's someone who I feel like, okay, who they were, their message was relatively clear, they kind of had themselves together, and they died, I'm hurt by it. But I can say they were kind of, in some sense, they had a life that made sense to me. And that's the part that I felt was a tragedy about, is that he died in the middle of his story.
Yeah.
And so I just don't have it in me. Maybe I've just been hated enough in my life, right, for things that I've said and done, to just be out of hate for people. And when people do stuff that I don't like, rather than meeting their rage with more rage, I kind of try to mourn their
Where they are.
and then I hope that God changes them.
Yeah.
And God doesn't have, anyways.
Okay, we all create things. Phil, you've been creating films and
Since before you were born.
probably. And
Really? 79?
You were born in 79?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was making films before then.
Esau, you and I both write stuff and preach and do all those things. And no doubt you've had the experience of going back and Phil watching something, or Esau reading something that you created a long time ago, and you kind of cringe a little bit.
Yeah.
And you go, ooh, I probably wouldn't do it that way today.
Yeah.
Or I've changed my view on this, or I've expanded my understanding of that. And you're grateful that you've grown, that God has changed you, that you've developed and all. And so to just take a snapshot of somebody in one moment and draw out the conclusion that this is the entirety is wrong.
Yeah, but I wouldn't say that's a snapshot. I think that we have the ministry that he did over a period,
but
the work that he did over a period of time.
He started this when he was 18.
Yeah.
He was killed at 31.
Yeah.
And most of the things most of us do in our 20s should never be recorded for posterity.
No.
And
Hey, I made VeggieTales.
all right,
Except for you.
Except for you, Phil. But
It took some of us a little bit longer to get a good
I mean,
idea.
this is a whole different topic, but we've kind of, especially within evangelical America, we very quickly platform people who have public gifts, right?
Who
can
have charisma.
Who have charisma, Riz, as the kids say.
Riz.
And we don't tend.
That's not what Riz means, but keep going.
It is.
No, it's not.
It's short for charisma.
Keep going.
Okay. Moving on.
All right. Anyway, the point being, we don't tend to hold people back from those influential positions because they don't have the maturity, the depth, the experience, whatever. And Charlie Kirk was a young man who got a lot of platform and a lot of notoriety for saying a lot of things that I wonder, had he lived longer, would he go back and go, hey, I regret saying that, or I maybe shouldn't have said it this way, or my view on that thing was unformed or unhelpful. I mean, that's just what we all do as we grow older.
I also think he was formed, like much of his generation, in online culture.
Right.
In social media culture, which is heavy on insults and put downs and push
shock.
And shock and awe. So in the same way that his assassin was shaped by online culture, so was he. And neither of them now will get the chance to come out and say, I was wrong about that.
Yeah. I think that one of the I'm glad that the internet did not exist when I was in my early 20s. It existed, but it wasn't like the way it is
Social
now.
media and things.
I do think it is different for me to be returning to pastoral ministry in my mid-40s, where I've kind of seen the emptiness of a certain kind of success. And I just don't really care about some of those things. And I realized thinking back on when I was a pastor in my 20s, I had the best of intentions. It wasn't that I was I was perfect. It wasn't that I was perfect or imperfect. It was just like I didn't know what I didn't know.
Right.
And I do think there is something about giving people time and space to grow and learn and develop. And I think not only that, they can be like sharp right and left turns. The whole point of like the thief on the cross story is that he made a mess of things his entire life, and at the last minute he kind of pulled himself together. And so I can't look at someone's life and say, I know how it's going to turn out. I can say, this doesn't, like God's going to have to intervene, but that's literally what God does.
That's right.
And so there we go.
There we go. I had one more story I was going to talk about because that was so controversial. I thought we should talk about Israel and Palestine.
Okay.
Yay.
In the last 6 minutes?
Yeah, I don't think we're going to do that, though. If you're wondering, UK, Canada, and Australia recognize Palestine as a state, breaking with the U.S.
Well, now most of the countries of the world have recognized
Yes.
Palestine as a state.
Yes, but
The U.S. is in the minority.
These were the first of the G7. First of the G7, and also close U.S. allies. Yes, France is going to at the UN on Monday. So it's on.
Is it though?
Something's on because the U.S. is becoming more of an outlier just with Benjamin Netanyahu. And
I don't expect anything to change under the current administration. So
no, the U.S. isn't going to change under the current administration.
I thought you meant maybe because of mounting international pressure, the U.S. would change its position. I just don't see that happening.
I don't see that happening either. But anyway, we can talk more about that next time. Yeah. Esau, you won't be here next time. You won't get to share with us what you think about Palestine and Israel.
I'm sure Caitlin will do a great job with whoever you guys have on. Thank you guys for having me. I'm going to have you all on the Esau McCaulley podcast.
Yeah.
How
long have you been doing the show?
About a year. I've not invited you yet.
You never invited
me? I've not
me?
even asked you. I'm sorry about that.
You never even invited
I've been
me.
meaning to, but I've been meaning to mean to. It's probably I've been meaning to mean to. That's fair, right?
There's a window where it's still okay. Like it's about a year.
A year. I mean, sorry, Mike. Mike, how many episodes have we done? 40?
Right around there. It hasn't quite been a year yet.
Yes, it's only been 40 other people we've had on the podcast.
Yeah.
You guys are up next. You're like 41 and 42.
Hey, I had you on the Skye pod.
Actually, we have people who are booked, maybe 44 and 45, but eventually you guys will be there.
I'd like to be both 45 and 47.
Oh, okay.
Okay. That's fun. Hey, everybody. Thanks for showing up again. Thanks for supporting us. Go to HOLYPOST Plus and see all the fun stuff that everybody's making. Check out Esau's show, Esau McCaulley podcast, wherever you get fine podcasts, bookstores, shopping malls, Kmart, Target.
That's where we're boycotting Target.
That's where I get my podcasts.
All right.
I buy my podcasts from local retailers. I want to support local businesses.
That's great.
Yeah, thanks.
You're welcome.
See you next time. This episode is sponsored in part by World Relief, the Christian humanitarian organization we trust to boldly engage the world's greatest crises in partnership with the church. Many of you have compassionate hearts toward the 120 million men, women, and children who've been forced to flee their homes. But I wonder, how much do we really know about mass displacement and its impact on families and children? I'd like to invite you to test your knowledge with a short quiz from World Relief at worldrelief.org/holypost. Along with the quiz, you'll have an opportunity to grow in your understanding of refugee resettlement with World Relief's free Intro to Resettlement e-learning course, a short, self-paced resource with a ton of great information about the global context of resettlement, the process of resettlement within the U.S., and the role of organizations like World Relief. If you feel the weight and urgency of the displacement crisis or just want to learn more, then take the quiz today and get your free e-learning course too. Head on over to worldrelief.org/holypost or look for the link in today's show notes. This episode is sponsored by The After Party. Are you exhausted by politics? 1 year after the election, the after party isn't asking who you voted for. It's asking what's shaping you now. If you've ever felt politically homeless, you're not alone. The after party is for Christians who want to be discipled more by Jesus than by the news cycle. It's not politics as usual. It's spiritual rehab for a church worn out by outrage and tribalism. The after party doesn't tell you what to think or who to vote for. There's no politician, party, or platform being pushed. Instead, it lays a theological foundation to help you reimagine politics through the lens of Scripture and neighbor love. And the best part? Almost everything is free. You can walk through the 6-week video course with your small group, explore a workshop version with your church, read the companion book by Curtis Chang and Nancy French, or even worship through the new album created with the Porter's Gate. If you're ready to exchange anger and anxiety for discipleship and hope, visit redeemingbabble.org and sign up for a free after-party course today. This episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. October 10th is World Mental Health Day, and boy, I'm a little worried about the world's mental health. Wouldn't it be great to find someone who can help you on your own journey to better mental health? BetterHelp therapists have helped more than 5 million people worldwide. I like the fact that you can request a Christian therapist, and that you can change therapists at any time until you find the person just right for you. Lisa and I have really benefited from working with a Christian therapist from time to time, and I know you will too. The right therapist can make a huge difference, and BetterHelp has been matching people with the right therapist for 12 years. This World Mental Health Day, we're celebrating the therapists who've helped millions of people take a step forward. If you're ready to find the right therapist for you, BetterHelp can help you start that journey. HOLYPOST listeners get 10% off their first month at BetterHelp.com/HOLYPOST. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/HOLYPOST.
My guest today is Dr. Terence Lester. He's the founder and executive director of Love Beyond Walls, a nonprofit organization focused on community mobilization and raising awareness about poverty and homelessness. As you'll hear in our conversation, Dr. Lester experienced the trauma of poverty and homelessness as a kid, and he understands how it deeply impairs education. The story of how he overcame those obstacles and what we need to do to help others overcome them is the topic of his new book, From Dropout to Doctorate: Breaking the Chains of Educational Injustice. The book is also our selection this quarter for the HOLYPOST Book Club. That means HOLYPOST Plus subscribers at the $10 tier or higher will receive a free copy of Terence Lester's book, and I promise you'll really be happy about getting it because it's really inspiring and challenging. Dr. Lester also serves as the Director of Public Policy and Social Change and is a professor at Simmons College of Kentucky. Here is my conversation with Terence Lester. Dr. Terence Lester, welcome to the HOLYPOST.
Skye, I'm really excited to be here.
I'm glad you're in person too. Like you're in studio with us. You're in Chicago for a couple days to do book promo stuff and signings and interviews. So thank you for coming out here to Wheaton. The book is called From Dropout to Doctorate: Breaking the Chains of Educational Injustice. It's part memoir, part policy advocacy.
Yes.
There's a lot of different elements to this book. One of the things that stood out to me is the way you draw a link between poverty and trauma and education. I'm guessing a lot of our audience doesn't put trauma into that equation very much. Explain why you link those three things together and maybe some of your own story that fleshes out why they belong together.
Yeah, there's a number of ways. First, I would say that there are two parts, many parts, but I namely use the lens of two parts of trauma in the book: historical trauma and then personal trauma, right? When we look at historical trauma, we can't look at historical trauma without understanding how cities and communities were actually shaped, right? If you have systemic injustice or some form of oppression, which leads to I'm talking about a framework I use in the book that leads to public policy. We can name redlining, for instance. There are many cities, even like Chicago,
Big time.
Atlanta, right, where streets and highways actually divides communities. You have vulnerable communities that are concentrated with poverty, where it was actually legalized to concentrate the impoverishment of communities in certain parts of town. And then you look at the social living conditions of those communities. Impoverishment itself, most times people think that it's only economics. Poverty is more than just economics. It's social, it's environmental, it's occupational, it's physiological, it's psychological, it's spiritual. Poverty affects the whole well-being of a person. And when you grow up in an environment that has been concentrated with poverty due to public policy, and that's linked to historic oppression or some form of injustice, then we have to move to the next step, which I define in the book is the trauma that is impacted as a result of all of these things. And so you imagine that poverty itself is a form of trauma. There's research that says that poverty, when you go through poverty, we shouldn't be separating trauma from poverty itself. Poverty is trauma. To wake up and not know where your next meal is coming from is a form of trauma. To work so much and you don't make a living wage is a form of trauma. To take your kids to school and you don't have a washing machine or dryer to wash their clothes, that's a form of trauma. To be a student that sits in a classroom and have the awareness that your family stayed in a motel or shelter, and you have to find the courage to show up in school and be taught a lesson that doesn't speak to your existential reality is a form of trauma. I grew up in that type of environment, right? I saw my mom as a single parent, work multiple jobs, have the resilience to go to grad school, to work on her graduate degrees long before the internet came out with online classes and stuff. I remember sitting late at night, watching my mom sit in the classroom. I could not understand what she was doing then, but her resilience, and she says this the other day, I wanted to ensure that you and your sister saw an example of what it was like to overcome and continue to pursue education as a pathway out. I remember the dilapidated buildings. I grew up in a food desert. I remember, the divestment in the community, but I also remember how rich the community was, not in terms of just economics, because sometimes people equate impoverishment with not having any brilliance, not having anything to give. And so there's a lot to that story. I experienced that early on. And, in the book, I'm trying to connect historically how my community was designed to how that impacted me in terms of educational trauma and produced the educational outcomes that I had to overcome.
The way you describe it in the book, I couldn't help but contrast it with my experience, which was very different.
What do you mean by that?
Well, I grew up in a community where I felt like there was a strong tailwind pushing me forward, right?
Yeah.
I would have to probably deliberately act against that tailwind to fail.
So you had thrust behind your...
Tons of it.
Wow.
In lots of ways. And the story you describe is immense headwinds coming against you.
Yeah.
And yet there were individuals like your mom in your life that helped you carve a way through that. Here's the struggle I have, honestly.
Yeah.
I think some people are going to read your book and hear your story and say to themselves, see, he did it.
Yeah.
And that's proof that in America, with enough grit, you can overcome anything. You no matter how strong those headwinds are, you can do it. And
can I speak to that?
Yeah, that's why I'm asking it. I'd love you to respond to that person who comes away with that message rather than the message of why aren't we doing more with these headwinds that are stopping so many young people from reaching their potential.
I feel all of the emotions when you were describing that. Normally when I go out and speak, sometimes I'll take a brief moment to say, I traveled a long way to get here. And I'm not talking about by vehicle or plane ride or the distance it took. I'm talking about the years and years and years of constantly having to find mentorship through strangers who become family, read books, the grit when I experienced homelessness as a teenager when I ran away from home, being a fifth-year senior, dropping out. I asked a professor not too long ago, when was the first time she ever heard about college? She told me fifth grade. I said, do you know when I heard about college that was an actual possibility? She says, when? I said, I was 20. She had a 10-year head start than I did. I remember working in the back of a warehouse. I had just got into church, had given my life to Christ. And there was this deacon, his name was Mr. Eason. I'll never forget Mr. Eason. One day I asked him if I could share my story with him, where I had come from, what I was trying to overcome. I didn't have any male role models in my life at that point to talk to me about education being a pathway, or, what should you become? What should you major in? What are you good at? None of those conversations, they were absent. And if a person doesn't understand the weight of what absence does when you don't have access to that type of exposure, it can set you back, right? And so Mr. Easton invited me over to his house, and I told him my story, and I said, I have a dream that I one day want to finish school. I want to go to college. He was a real estate developer. He used to develop, apartment complexes, subdivisions. He was a very wealthy guy. And he sat there and listened to my story, and he says, young man, I understand where you've come from, but you're not going to be able to do this alone. He encouraged me to go to school. I get enrolled in school. He says, if you start, I'll help you. I was working at a warehouse. I saved up half of the tuition check. I reached out to Mr. Krog, which was the registrar at the school that I enrolled in, and I said, would you please just give me an opportunity to start school? I don't know how I'm going to, get it, but I'm sure I will. I wasn't making that much, right? I start going to this small Bible college, and Mr. Eason stepped in, and he started helping me to pay for my undergrad education. So much so that he became a mentor. He walked my wife down the aisle. He was the one that told me that I would overcome. One day I would use my story. Mr. Eason passed away 2 years ago. You want to know what the last text message he said to me? Because he allowed me to borrow his courage and confidence that he had in me long before I had it in myself. He says, you're one of the greatest investments I ever made. And man, you think about people who may be on the south side of Chicago right now who may not have a Mr. Eason. You think about the people in the city of Atlanta who may not have access to the exposure or the conversations, right? Sometimes we even forget, using the framework of redlining. Redlining concentrates poverty in neighborhoods, but we forget how housing itself is connected to education, right? How do you fund school systems? Based on the property taxes. What if you're growing up in a school system or in a neighborhood that doesn't have the type of funding that could provide the extra support for teachers, that could renovate buildings, that could provide access to the exposure of rigorous coursework, that could provide some of the college preparatory conversations that you had. I have a friend right now, he said, he would tell you, right? I never had anybody sit me down and talk to me about college. I have several friends like that. Mm-hmm. And my story should not be the rarity, is what I'm communicating. Sometimes people look at, a model right? And say anybody could do it, but forget the millions of people who are still left behind.
Yeah. Reading about that in the book and hearing you say it now, like, thank God for Mr. Eason.
Praise God for Mr. Eason.
Yeah, his generosity, his vision, you said you could borrow the courage that he had. Like, amen, wonderful. Yes. At the same time, isn't it sort of an indictment that he's necessary?
He's necessary. He's necessary. Why do we... And this is the thing, like, why should Mr. Eason's have to become the disruption in the lives of young men like I once was, right? Why don't we normalize it where everybody has educational equity, educational access, where a person shouldn't have to dream about dropping out of high school before they're dreaming of going to college or dreaming to become whatever it is that they want to become. And most times people don't think how critical education is. I mean, I was doing a podcast not too long ago and we got into the AI revolution. You know how many jobs are going to be wiped out just based on, I mean, you can order a car right now and there's no driver. You can walk into a restaurant and type in your order and there's nobody taking your order. Some of the jobs that are readily available for people who didn't achieve any academic heights or anything like that. And it's not an indictment against them, but how do we get students access to STEAM, science, technology, engineering, the arts, and the mathematics? The only pathway into those careers sometimes is by having access to education, higher education, or even certification programs that will give them an advantage.
What I appreciate about your book and your story is, there's this stereotype on the left that the way to deal with all these systemic problems is government program, funding, money, things like that. The stereotype on the right is the way you deal with these things is through personal transformation, right? And often faith gets incorporated into that, or personal morality or grit or whatever. And your story acknowledges the reality of both of these things. It's not one or the other, right? There is a personal side of this. You talk about that. And the relationships, like your mother and certain teachers, Mr. East and others who were instrumental in your development, without ignoring the fact that there is deeply systemic headwinds here that need to be tackled in a systemic way. It's not one or the other. Talk about what you're doing today that's addressing both sides of this rather than just falling into the pattern of it's all on one end or the other.
Yeah. I love the... Well, I guess firstly, man, I want to address Dr. Teresa Gowan in her book, Hobos, Hustlers, and Backsliders. She has this framework that talks about socially constructed ideas or narratives as it relates to poverty, right? And they fall into three categories: sin talk, sick talk, and system talk. The sin talk category deals with, I can tell where somebody stands about how they perceive those who are impoverished based on the sin talk narrative. Maybe they have a character flaw. Maybe there's something wrong with them. Maybe there's a moral issue. Maybe they don't have enough faith. And the way that she describes through research that we have collectively addressed that category is through punishment, punitive measures.
Right.
Exclusion, displacement, and really having the type of criminal language that causes people who are unhoused or poor to be demonized in a way where we trample on their inherent worth and value, right? Because in reality, I know some people who are impoverished who know more Bible than people who go to church every Sunday. I know some unhoused people right now who have more morality and character and integrity, but their stories are being suppressed or even stigmatized due to this socially constructed narrative that to be poor is synonymous with being immoral,
right? Lazy,
like all of that. Those are social and political talking points that don't really lift up the humanity and the inherent worth and dignity of God's beloved people, no matter what your socioeconomic place is. Then you have the sick talk category. This is the pathologizing of a community. Something's wrong with them mentally. Maybe they're mentally unwell. And most times when people are using this type of narrative language or rhetoric, they have access to mental health support. They have enough resources to go and sit down with a clinical counselor. They don't have to use a sliding scale. It's accessible to them. Maybe they do have access to insurance. And I think that does those who may have certain struggles a disservice, because you have the opportunity to talk from a place of having support without necessarily understanding what it's like to not have access to those supports. When you think about it right now, the system is overwhelmed. There's a great need for more clinicians. There's a great need for people mainly who have never had the opportunity to process their trauma to have this type of support. And we call people lazy. We call people of having moral issues, but we don't address the systemic issues or the communities or the conditions that has produced this trauma where people have to navigate. And then lastly, we don't spend enough time talking about systems. You know, I talk about in that book the residue of years and decades, man. I still can ride back into the community where I come from and still see the decay, not just the decay in the buildings, but the emptiness of the soul, right? I do think that people need support. I do think that, programs and access to resources can help give people who have been disadvantaged an opportunity to overcome. However, I do believe that it is internal, that it does take grit and resilience. But let me ask you this. You said something earlier. You said you had the tailwind. What happens when you are moving towards resistive winds and you keep getting knocked down and knocked down and knocked down? There's a research that's out right now that says it takes 20 years to overcome poverty without anything going wrong.
Wow.
That was a report released by economists on the Atlantic. They did a study between upward mobility and a person's social equity. Like, I'm not just talking about social capital or resources. I'm talking about who are you in relationship with?
Right.
What kind of community are you a part of? You know how many access to resources or job opportunities or just wisdom that comes from accessing community? How many people have those types of access to community when they don't come from what would be perceived as the right part of town? And so I think it's both and. I do think we have an opportunity to provide the support and access for students who may be at a disadvantage, but I also think that there needs to be real encouragement and models and support where people can borrow the courage and have the confidence in themselves to say, I can do this, even when those winds of resistance continue to come in a person's life. And the only way I was able to do that is because I kept meeting people who saw the best in me. Miss West, Mr. Moore, Mr. Eason, Dr. Joe, who loaned me his car for an entire year. My car broke down when I was going to college. I told him that I was about to drop out. He walks me outside one day after class and he says, young man, my wife is a nurse. I can be dropped off. I hardly knew him. He hands me his keys and says, you can use my car. He loaned me and my now wife of 19 years the keys to his car. He did not know me from Adam. And he says, whatever you do, don't give up. When was the last time you gave somebody your keys to the car? When was the last time you spent that type of proximate relationship, ensuring that the person that you were walking with, I'm not talking about walking for people, that you were walking with, understood that you believe so much in them that they had the potential that they would be able to overcome until they were actually able to overcome.
It's just a reminder, regardless of what your tailwinds or headwinds were, we are all the product of community.
That's right.
Whether
I 100% believe
we are all, whether it's because we came from a family where there was a lot of those tailwinds, or a community that's well resourced, whatever. I'm not here because of my own ability. I'm here because there was a lot of help that got me here, and you are too. Looks different, but it gets me towards the end of the book. Chapter 9 is titled "Redemption and the Healing Power of Community."
Yeah.
So somebody who has your story might think, hey, I got my ticket out. I've got an education. I've got a PhD. You could have just said goodbye to Southwest Atlanta and moved on to whatever, some greener pastures, but you didn't. You're there. You're committed to that community.
We're doing work in Title I schools.
So, I mean, it's a little cliche, but I want to hear you say it. Like, why didn't you take your ticket and get out? Why did you stay?
Because I never seen education as a vehicle to be self-serving. The pursuit of education was to build more capacity. More capacity for what? More capacity to serve. The more capacity I have is not to have more capacity where it's just me, myself, and I. Is more capacity to truly live out what it means to have service as a lifestyle. When I look at Jesus's example, for the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve and give his life as a ransom for many. And I follow that type of Jesus, that type of model, and I get all of this stuff and I'm like, oh, I want to just hoard it to myself. No, I want to go back and let people know that they too have what it takes to overcome. They too have potential. They too have brilliance, whatever that means. If I have to, we created an organization to serve the unhoused community, to be proximate with those that I could relate to, because I understand both sides, right? But I want people who have been made invisible to know that God loves them so much that it doesn't matter their present circumstance, that God is the great restorer. He is the great redeemer. And God has the final say-so with the direction in which a person's life can journey down, right? I want to do work in Title I schools where kids are showing up every single day and they can't connect with the lesson because their families are unhoused. If we have to build resource centers in the school and retrofit classrooms so parents can come into school and wash their clothes, parents can come in and have access to food, parents can come in and have access to what the digital divide leaves out, access to technology so they can fill out job applications, I'm going to do that. Why? Because I didn't get a bunch of knowledge just to hoard it to myself. I'm doing myself and my community a disservice if I'm not taking what God has given me to go back and then serve other people, right? Isn't that what we're called to do? Become signposts? To point to the great Redeemer, the one that is able to save, the one that is able to rescue, the one that is able to restore, the one that is able to cause people to have the type of restoration in their lives where they can become great, right? Isn't that the disciples were arguing amongst each other about who was going to be the best. And Jesus flipped the script and he says, if you want to be the best, go serve. Right? I didn't get into research, and my philosophical inquiry came as a result of what I lived through, what I struggled through from me being proximate to the community. Even when I was doing my PhD research, there was this great debate about like, oh, we got to figure out how to take our scholarship and make an impact in the community. We need to become scholar practitioners. And I was like, no, I'm a practitioner scholar, right? Because I was proximate to community long before I even had an idea of what I wanted to do in research. I sat with people who were in tears. I cried with people who did not have enough money because they weren't making a livable wage. I cried with people who were being publicly sanitized because of laws and ordinances, and they were experiencing homelessness. I did work in school. So like, why wouldn't I continue to do that? That community made me. I don't want to leave it. I want to go back and invest into it, right? Isn't that the goal, right? I'm just asking you, man. Like, I think we need to push back against this leaving mentality. We don't become great to distance ourselves. We become great to serve people, right?
It permeates your book. That word proximity comes up all the time.
Yes.
Right. And then here at the end with the community thing, the importance of proximity. And that is such a core gospel value.
Yes.
Right. Jesus came and dwelt among us.
Yes.
Lived among us.
Yes.
Was proximate to us, shared in our humanity and our brokenness. And so, those themes are beautiful and powerful. Before we wrap up, I'd love for you to tell the story of the turning point when you were in high school and you were ready to chuck the whole thing and walk out, and something pretty unusual happened that got your attention. I'd love for you to tell that story and what impact that continues to have on you in the work you're doing.
I was, my mom was doing the best that she could. I was dealing with a lot of the, like the trauma from my environment, family conflict, the whole nine. So much so it caused me to bounce around from high school to high school until finally I landed in an alternative school, and it was considered open campus. And one day I was so burdened. I say, this is it. I'm just going to give up on school. I pushed myself away from the desk. I'm walking out of the classroom. I had 3 peers to follow me. Walk right out the front door. Not less than 100 yards away from the school. It's a person experiencing homelessness. This man, I still don't know his name, but I remember his face. Trash hanging from his beard. And he says, because it was visibly, that he hasn't like taken a shower or had access to like hygiene or sanitation. He says, young man or young men, he called to all of us, but I was the only one to respond. I turn and I walk over to him and he says, young man, is that your school back there? He points at the school. And I say, yes, sir. I'm from the South. We say, yes, sir. And he says, whatever you do, don't stop getting your education. And I'm like, this guy's telling me this. He doesn't know that, I ran away from home, or sometimes I would, sleep in parks or from friend's house to friend's house. He doesn't know that I had family conflict where I was growing up with a single parent. Why is he saying this? And he says, look at me. He says, you're going to be a leader one day. A man experiencing homelessness, one of the first men that will ever tell me that I would be a leader, had no address. That disruption spoke to me. I eventually dropped out, but that conversation stayed with me, and it planted a seed. It became a catalyst. One day I talked to my mom, and I was like, I want to go back to school. And she says, well, I don't want you to get a GED, because during that time coming up, GED was used to stigmatize Black people, right? You couldn't get hired if you had a GED. And she says, I'm going to try to get you back into school. She somehow gets me back into school as a 5th-year senior. You know how embarrassing that is to go back to school as a 5th-year senior? Had students talking about me, making fun. You're a super senior, There's some educators who did not understand my social location, so they would label me, right? Why I would be tired in school, or why I would be despondent or have this type of disposition that did not want me there. There was a teacher named Miss West. I got enrolled in her class, 10th grade geometry, 5th-year senior. I walk into her class one day, her first year teaching. She was a Black woman. She notices me. She keeps looking at me. And one day she tells me to stay after class. I have no margin for error. I can't fail anything. Nothing. She says, young man, I just want to say something to you. You're Black, you're brilliant. You're going to get through this. I've heard the chatter, and I want you to use my classroom as a sanctuary. This lady opened up her classroom. This class I could go into when I just needed to decompress. Classroom I could go into. Her name was Miss West. And she would just like become a champion for me and a large part of why I finished high school. Years later, I end up in church. Guess who was a part of my church family? Miss West. She says I always knew it. Around that time, Mr. Eason is in the same church. They're encouraging me to continue to go to college. 5 degrees later. And it's all as a result of people who saw me. And when I talk about seeing, I'm not talking about being ableistic. I'm talking about seeing my worth beyond my circumstance.
What that reminds me of is, well, there's multiple pieces to it, honestly, that strike me. I had a significant turning point in my young life where a stranger came up to me in a similar way and gave me that catalytic message that I wasn't expecting. But I mean, you and your wife and the nonprofit you're leading, you're creating all these great opportunities for people.
Yes.
Right. Whether it's, food so that they can get through the day, tutoring,
hygiene and sanitation,
hygiene, all those,
ID recovery, right. Because,
all necessary and wonderful, important programs. And yet I suspect beneath all of that, what you also know is as people engage in those things, it's an opportunity for them to meet a Miss West,
yes,
or Mr.
Yes,
Eason, or that stranger who has that prophetic word,
yes,
that they need to hear to keep them going.
Yes.
Like those are the vehicles that God uses,
amen,
to push us forward, even as we need those tangible things like tuition help,
yes,
a classroom,
yes,
sanctuary,
tutoring,
those, so
soft skills development. I had one volunteer who had a knack for research. Met this guy named Ronald. He was experiencing homelessness, had been out of touch with his family for years. She helped him find his family. We created the first museum in the United States called the Dignity Museum that represents the subject of homelessness out of a shipping container. Immersive storytelling, helping people to build empathy towards this community. This family walks in and finds their aunt in the museum because we had been proximate. And right before their aunt passed away from COVID in 2020, they thanked us, but they also allowed us to put her face on the side of our truck for her legacy to live on. And you want to know what the greatest story is? My own father. I am sitting next to his hospital bed. We have these wristbands that says "Give Love Away." He asked me for one years ago. He's battling stage 4 cancer. And we get into a conversation about his faith, because he gave his life to the Lord later in life, invited my family. I saw my own father get baptized, but I never knew like what was the seed or the spark. And I asked him, and I was like, you starting to talk about your faith more. We had become really close friends. God redeemed the relationship. My dad was one of my best friends towards the end of his life. And he says, you were the first one I ever told about that. I was like, yeah, I recorded this. I still listen to this. And he says, that was a part of you that came to me because I saw your faith and I saw what you were doing for people. My dad told me that the sacrifices that I had made with like serving the community, and you know what I mean? That's what I mean by long journey. I got to see my father come to faith and become one of my close friends. And I got a chance to humanize him in a way where God allowed forgiveness in our bond to be close. Psychologists would say there are 3 phases that a child goes through. It's idolization, demonization, and if you are lucky, you get to a place where you can humanize your parent. God gave me that experience with my own father, man, and I carry his legacy right now, even sitting here, because it's a full story. It's not just pain, It's also joy. But isn't that what we should be fighting for? Educational equity, making sure that people who may have a different story than you get moments of redemption, the ability to stand in the classroom if they want to become a teacher or become an engineer or become a professor or become a lawyer or a doctor. Why should we say they can do it on their own without offering the type of support needed so they can stand on their own, right? I am a product of my dad. I'm a product of my mom. I'm a product of my community. I'm a product of my faith. I'm a product of all of the things that God has used to make me to be who I am. And I'm proud of it. You want to know why? Because my children are watching. And my ceiling will become their floor.
Amen. A great word to end on. Again, the book, From Dropout to Doctorate, Breaking the Chains of Educational Injustice. I hope, if you guys have been listening to this interview, if you care about education, you want to read this book. If you care about historical trauma and the trauma caused by poverty, you want to read this book. But if those topics don't resonate with any of you, you still want to read this book because the story you've just told, honestly, the story you've told is it's an empathetic story that I think anyone, even people who don't have your story, connect to pieces of this.
Yes.
For sure. So, and the power of community and redemption and the call to be proximate and give back.
Yeah. And it takes all of us.
It does. It does. So, Dr. Lester, thank you for the beautiful book and for sharing your story and for being on the Holy Post.
Man, thank you so much. Really honored to be here.
Hello, everyone. If you like this video, please like and subscribe on YouTube. And even if you didn't like this one, you'll like the next one. And please do it or I'm going to lose my job. And I have 4 kids. And they eat a lot of food.